Hello and welcome back to Listen Up, presented by Dempsey's Grill and Sportsline. Like Phil said in the game recap against Villanova, I'm going to be riding solo for these next two episodes for Providence, the last check-in, and of course the game recap for tomorrow night. So you guys are going to have to deal with me these next 2 days, but Phil will of course be back for the South Carolina game, the last check-in should be coming out Friday for South Carolina, and then of course the big game recap on Sunday. But a couple of things I want to go over before we get into some UConn news and the Providence Friars, of course. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We only need about 60 more to get to 1,000 subscribers, which is pretty unreal of saying that out loud. Be amazing if we could get to 1,000 before the season ends. Obviously, me and Phil can't thank you guys enough for all the support that you've shown us over these past 2 years now. I guess it's been since we've been covering UConn, so we would much appreciate it. Almost to 1,000. It's just amazing. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Also, one other thing, Phil mentioned this before. I'll also start putting it in the description for the videos. But if you want to join me and Phil for an episode, shoot us an email at listenupmaryland@gmail.com. We'll try to get back to you with more info. I think we've already received 2 or 3 emails, so that's good. And we'll try to get back to those people as soon as we can in the next upcoming week and provide you guys with more details about that. So listen up. Maryland@gmail.com if you would like to join me and Phil for an upcoming episode. But now let's move on to some UConn news. The Huskies stayed at the number 5 spot in this week's AP poll. Top 5 stays pretty much the same. South Carolina, Stanford, LSU, Indiana, and then UConn. The big one, obviously, is Ohio State drops down 8 spots after ending the month on a 3-game losing streak after they won about 20 or 21 games in a row. I think the Big Ten is a pretty tough conference, so it should be interesting when we get to March Madness to see all these different teams who makes it from which conferences. But some news on the injuries for UConn as well. Don't really have any breaking news, but I did see where Caroline Ducharme is trending towards playing. I'm not sure if she'll be available for tomorrow night for this Providence game, but it does sound like she will be back soon, which is good news to hear. It sounds like she's been having some good workouts lately, so sounds like she'll be back sooner rather than later, which is really good news for this team. We definitely need Caroline to come back very, very soon. This will be UConn's 5th game in 12 days, and we saw on Sunday that it's been taking quite the toll on these starters. They had a huge week last week, fifth game in 12 days, so it's pretty challenging when the bench doesn't play a lot. So it's a lot of work on these starters. So, but moving on to Providence, the Friars 13-10 record overall, 4-8 conference record in the first matchup against UConn, which has almost been 2 months ago. Providence lost the game 98-53. So head coach Jim Crowley and the staff have quite the task and their hands full trying to come up with a game plan for UConn and trying to defeat the UConn Huskies somehow. But senior guard, of course, Janiah Crooms remains the leader of this team, averaging just under 12 points. Now, she did miss their last game against Xavier this past Saturday. So I tried to look on the internet, a couple different places on Twitter to try to find an update on her. I couldn't find one. Maybe one of you guys have some news on her. So I'm not sure if she'll be playing in this game tomorrow night or not. But I will say if Providence is without Crooms, it's going to be an even longer night than what it's already going to be for the Friars. But let's talk about some keys to the game and kind of what to expect. I would expect Gino to play the bench in this game. Ayana, Amari, Ines. I would think, I hope they at least all get about 10 minutes to try to rest the starters as much as possible to get ready for, of course, the big game Sunday against South Carolina. I don't think this game is going to be relatively close. And I think that's the main reason why I think Gino is going to feel comfortable playing his bench in this game. And the key, I think, for UConn's to play suffocating defense. I think Providence is going to have a hard time trying to score points to begin with, especially if they're without Janiah Kroom. So think, the key is to just, play Providence as tough as possible, create turnovers, make it really hard for them to score any points in general. I think UConn's offense as well. I think they're going to rebound from last game. Lou scored less points than Nika Mule, which saw a lot of people say they didn't really expect that to happen at all this season, which is pretty surprising. So, I mean, Lou had a tremendous past 2 weeks. So, just an off game from her on Sunday. Villanova's a pretty good defensive team. That was a pretty defensive matchup all the way around this past Sunday. So, just an off day from, I think, Lou and Aaliyah from that game. So I would expect both of them to kind of bounce back in this game, have a bounce back performance, probably around 20 points if I had to guess. Or predict for this game for both of those players, and Nika with a season low of 3 assists, I think, as well. So I think this will be a huge, backup game or a comeback game for a lot of these starters. I think it's going to be pretty high scoring for UConn and pretty low scoring for the Providence Friars, for them to just get anything going in this game. Let's move on to comments from the last video. UConn getting the narrow win against Villanova. We'll start with Paul Samora. Definitely hit the wall today. Team shows their character. They do not quit. They do not feel sorry for themselves. Talent is just amazing. It's one thing to play 6 to 7 players, but to have only 6 to 7 is an entirely different issue. High five to coaches also. And then I saw where Iva agreed and said if AZ came back, to keep her out of the starting 5 and have her play 20 to 25 minutes, which I thought was an interesting point to make. I definitely agree with Paul. I think the team obviously hit a wall. They had a tough stretch of games, not a lot of rest. So yeah, I mean, I just think the starters have had a tremendous workload the whole season of just UConn in general only having 7 healthy players for most of the year, 7 to 8. Of course, Gino is only going to really play 7 to 8 to begin with. So I think the starters for UConn just always have a healthy workload on their hands. I mean, Nika, all 3 of her years here, I know that definitely the past 2 when we've been covering the team, I mean, she usually plays about 30 to 35 minutes every single night. So, I mean, that's just kind of the workload that's expected out of these players. All 5 players in the starting lineup are tremendously talented. Of course, the ones on the bench are too, but Gino just doesn't trust Amari, Ines, or Ayana hardly enough yet to play those 3 players in big games and close games that are of the caliber. But I think definitely when AZ and Caroline hopefully are able to return soon, they will definitely play. Obviously, I think Caroline, hopefully she'll be able to return for that game on Sunday against South Carolina. That would be a tremendous boost for UConn to be able to bring her off the bench to provide rest for Lou or maybe Nika. Or maybe even Aubrey. If one of those players gets in foul trouble, Gino will be able to put Caroline in, hopefully. So we're crossing our fingers that Caroline will be available for that game. And then Iva, I kind of agree with her. I mean, as good as the starting lineup has been playing, the chemistry is obviously there between all of the players. So I think it'd definitely be a possibility to play AZ about 20 to 25 minutes. Of course, we've kind of thought and assumed that she was fully healthy from that knee. And then she just kind of took a little, I don't know what I want to call it, a little contact. All it was is just a little contact to that knee from an imposing player, and it was obviously it caused another kind of major injury to be able to. I mean, she's on crutches and gonna miss about 2 to 3 weeks. So. We just hope and pray that AZ is fully healthy when she returns, and I don't think it'd be a bad idea at all to keep the starting 5 the same and have AZ come off the bench, during the NCAA tournament, and hopefully maybe she'll be able to come back in time for the Big East tournament. And like we saw with Paige last year, maybe not have her in the starting lineup right away and play AZ about 15 to 20 minutes a game. And then during the tournament, 20 to 25, like Iva said. So I kind of do agree with that. And then maybe have Caroline play around 15 minutes. So I think that might be the recipe for success. That it is a good possibility that Gino does play those players with those minutes. We'll get into one more here. I'll go over. Let's see. Well, I'm not going to go over one specific one, but I do see a lot of I do see a lot of comments talking about how Villanova had a full week's rest and UConn was playing 3 games in 8 days. One of them, of course, nationally televised road game against Tennessee. I completely agree with all of you guys. I think me and Phil tried to say that in the video, but yeah, I mean, obviously Villanova, they were they were rested, and everybody could tell that UConn wasn't. They looked tired. Gino said they didn't have anything after that first quarter, which you could obviously see. So, a couple days rest here before the Providence game. That's why I think it's such a big deal to play the 3 bench players in this game. I don't think it's going to be close after the first quarter. Definitely not after the second half. So I think Gino has to play the bench players in this game to give the starters some type of rest before the South Carolina game, because we all know what's coming in that South Carolina game. And UConn cannot play like they did against Villanova and just have no gas left in the tank against South Carolina. So and also the bench not playing in that game. I saw a couple people wondering why Gino didn't play the bench. If all the starters are tired, why didn't he just play the bench players? And I think that it's pretty obvious that Gino obviously doesn't trust those 3 bench players, Ayana, Amari, and Ines. He doesn't trust them in those types of games, in that type of situation where the game is close throughout. It's a very competitive game. I don't think Gino trusts those players yet. And of course, 2 of them are freshmen, right? Ayana and Ines are just freshmen. So, it's not a bad thing that he doesn't trust them yet. They still have a ton of learning to do. And of course, Amari, she's had her she's had her ups and downs. She was injured last season. It's been a tough year for Amari. She's had a couple bad games, couple good games where she showed promise, but it's just that Gino doesn't trust Amari or Ines or Ayana for those type of games where they're going to be close, very highly competitive games. I think just the score prediction is left, and then I'll log off for the day and be back tomorrow night. I believe the game starts at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken, 7 o'clock. So I'll be on probably around 9 o'clock after that game to recap it against Providence. But I'm going to go final score prediction 83-48 in favor of UConn. Like I said, I don't think this game is going to be close at all. And I hope Gino plays the bench players to give the starters some rest, so they'll be ready and fully rested for South Carolina. So I think that's going to do it for me. Like I said, I will be back on tomorrow night, probably around 9 o'clock after the game, to hopefully recap another UConn Huskies win, hopefully another in-conference win. Let's keep that win streak going in the conference, stay undefeated. And I think that's going to do it for me. I will see you guys tomorrow night for the recap. This has been Rye signing off for now.